Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make this Rosebud macrame bracelet, and it looks like this. So you have a load of rosebuds here running down to create your bracelet, and I've just added some beads to the sides just for a bit of embellishment. And then you have a button closure with a loop that you made yourself. You can obviously use findings to finish it off if you want to, that's completely up to you. But this is the technique that I'm going to be showing you today, making these rosebuds just in a single line. What I've also done is I've done a macrame version of it using the same technique to get your rosebuds there, but I just made many more rows so it's much wider because you have multiple rows here running alongside each other. So this is the same basic technique but just using more of the same. So I'm going to have a video on how to do this at a later date, but if you want to learn how to make this one today, then stay tuned. And these are the things that I'm going to be using. Now first off, we have the cord here. In this case I'm working with a 1mm satin cord, and I've just chosen kind of a dark burgundy colour here because I thought that would look nice with the rosebud theme. And then also the beads I'm using here, these are 4mm metal spacer beads and just in a silver colour. And you just got to make sure whatever beads you're using that the hole is large enough to take your cord through. And the final thing here is a little button. It's just a shank button, and this is just what I'm going to use to kind of for the closure part, but you can also do that however you want to. So let's get all the materials together and let's get started. So to begin with, we need to cut a cord so we can start making the piece, and what I have here is 3 lengths of 2.5 meters each, and this is what we're going to be using for the whole bracelet. So to begin with, I'm just going to get one of my lengths here of cord that I've already cut, and we just need to make the clasp part first, or the loop rather. And I'm going to do that with macrame as well. So I find about the middle of this length, and then I just attach it to my mini macrame board here, just for easiness to work with. So the middle of that cord is around here, because that's what I'm going to do my first macrame around. And then I'll take my remaining 2 cords here, and I also find the middle by putting the ends together, like this. And then just where I have my finger here, where the loop is, that's roughly the middle. So just keep hold of that, and then again I attach this to my board just so the middle of these cords end up about the middle of the one we already attached. Because what we're going to do now is use these 2 to then make some square knots around that first one that we already attached. So what we do is we start with one of these loose ones. And I'm going to start on my left side, you can start on the right one, that's completely up to you, it doesn't make a difference. We're going to make square knots now to make this loop part of the bracelet. So I'm going to take my left one and bring that over the middle, take the other one over that, and then underneath everything in the middle here and up through the loop. And that's the first half of a square knot, and then just keep it down here roughly the middle, and take the other side over the middle, the other one over that, and then underneath everything in the middle here and up through the loop, just like that. And then we tighten that, we now have one full square knot, and that's how you make a square knot. If you're a bit unsure about basic macrame knots, the square knots and hair hitches and that, then I'll put a link in the description box to a video that I've done on basic macrame knots, and it might be helpful to have a look at that. But then otherwise what you want to do is make a few of these to basically build up a bit of a row of square knots here. And how many you do is going to be dependent on what kind of button or whatever you're using to go through, because the length of this is going to determine the size of your loop. So just make however many, take it off and then measure against your button or whatever you're using. So I'm going to make a few on this side, and then when I feel like I'm about halfway there, what I'm going to do is flip my board around and then also use the length on the other side to make a few square knots there as well, about the equivalent. It's just so we use up these working cords that we're working with about the same on each side. So you just want to do this until you have enough square knots to make the size loop that you need. So I've now done a section of it here, and I think I'm about the right size. So I'm just going to take it off my board here, and then just going to test it out. So what I'm going to do is then just hold it so it lies flat, and then just start shaping it into that loop shape. So just like this. And then once you have it where you want it, it's going to hold its shape as well when you then secure it down here. And I'm just going to hold the two ends together to just double check and test it. See that my button goes through quite easily, but still a bit tight so it's not too loose either. That's going to go through just perfectly, perfect size. So what we need to do now is secure the two ends together down here and then start the actual bracelet. So what I'm going to do is on my board here, I'm just going to kind of place this as I want it and where I'm going to work with it. Make sure these two ends are pushed together. And then what I'm going to do is take some pins and just place them through my work, just so it'll stay in place while we're working with it and while we're making our first few knots until it's then completely tied together. So like that. And then what we have now are all these chords, the three original ones that are now all facing this way. So this is now turned into 6 working chords coming this way. And so to fasten it together here at the ends, what I'm actually going to do is go straight into this design of the bracelet. Now you could also use the two outer ones and do a square knot if you feel more comfortable with that. It's completely fine, but I'm just going to go straight into the design. So what we have is our 6 working chords. So put the 2 on each side, outer ones, just out of the way. We're working with the 2 inner ones first. So the 2 pointing towards each other in the very middle. And then what I'm going to do is take my right one, cross over the left one, like that. So that means the ones that goes over is the holding chord, the one that comes underneath from the left side is the working chord. And then we're going to do double half hitches, so take your working chord around your finger and through the loop. So you get this, it looks like this, so a reverse 6 on this side, and then you tighten that all the way up to the very bottom of your two ends here, of all your square knots. And this is how we're going to fasten it together. This is just one, so a double half hitch we need to do it again. So take your working chord around your finger and through the loop. And just make sure everything sits right, because that second knot now is what's going to kind of hold it in place. Like that. And then move on. The same, the one that was your holding chord. We're building a row of knots going this way towards the left. So we need to take the very next chord that's coming on this side and bring it underneath. So that was the middle one out of the 3 from this side, and then do a double half hitch with that as well, like that. And then kind of make sure that your row of knots, you're coming down at an angle a little bit so it doesn't go straight across, but you're starting to come down. And then the very last loose one on this side, bring that underneath and do a double half hitch around your finger and through the loop, around your finger and through the loop, just like that. So that's the one side. Now we've done that, we've done that first row first, we need to move to the other side. So the 3 on this side, put them out of the way, go back to you now have 3 on the other side here. So the one in the middle, the very first working chord that you used, that is not going to be your holding chord for this side, so that goes underneath the other ones. Then you take the very next one, so the middle one of the 3, bring it underneath. And then you're doing the same thing now, you're just using opposite hands. So you then take that around your finger and through the loop, because that's your working chord. And then tighten that around your finger and through the loop. And on this side you're getting a normal 6. So that's a way to kind of tell as well, if you're making the right knots. Tighten that, your first double half hitch. Bring in the very last chord. The loose one, the last one you haven't used yet. Take that underneath. And then you double half hitch the exact same way around your finger and through the loop. So just like that. And now our loop is also attached together, so the loose ends, so now it's actually forming a loop and it's nice and secure. So these are our first 2 rows of knots. So to continue with the Rosebud, what we're going to go back to doing is go back to the very 2 center ones, so the 2 chords in the middle here, these 2, and cross them over. Again, I take my right one over my left one. You can do it the opposite way around if you want to, just make sure you kind of do the same thing throughout the whole bracelet to keep a consistency. And then take the one going underneath around your finger and through the loop. You get a reverse 6 here, and then tighten that all the way up. And then what you're doing now is building a row of knots here underneath the first one you did, so the one that's going towards the left. Round your finger and through the loop for the double half hitch, like that. And the next one, round your finger and through the loop. Round your finger and through the loop for your double half hitch. As you can see, you've built a row of knots right below the other one. And try and get them as tight as you can to each other so you don't really have any gaps in there. And now we move to the other side. We've done this side again. We don't do the last one now, like we did before. We just stop before that. So we go back to the first working cord that we just used. So we have the 3 on the other side, so the inner one of those 3 on this side. Bring that across. Take the very next one, so the middle one underneath, around your finger and through the loop. And tighten that. Around your finger and through the loop. And remember, here is on this side you get your normal 6. And now this row of knots that we're making is right below the one on this right side. So just like that. And same principle, make sure your rows are as nice and tight together as you can get them. So this is basically the first half of our first rosebud almost done. What we just need to do now is do the middle part. That's what we reach now. So again, we'll go back to the very 2 middle ones that are going facing towards each other like this. Again, cross the right one over the left one, if that's what you do. And then do a double half hitch here. So basically start a new row right below the other ones. Like that. And then that's the very middle part. What we need to do now is start coming down the other side so we can then complete the rosebud. To do that, again we'll go back to just starting with one side. So it's on my left side here, what I do is I take the middle one, the one that we just used, the inner one, and then the middle one of these 3. And then what we need to do is take the middle one and cross over the inner one. And then that one we just crossed over, the one in the middle from this side, that's going to be the holding cord. So we then take the one underneath around our finger and through the loop and do a double half hitch again. Difference is now when you tighten this, you'll be able to see once more to make it a double half hitch, tighten it all the way up. So what we're basically doing is continuing the second row that we did on this side, but we're coming around, it's curving around and basically changing direction a little bit. So that's how we're going to come back down to then create this other half of the rosebud. So that's the first one side here. So I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. So the 2 inner ones, so the very inner one of these 3 and then the middle one. The middle one crosses over because that's the holding cord, and then the one underneath you do a double half hitch and tighten that, and then it's the same principle. You'll be able to see that you're continuing that second row on this side, also coming around at a curve. So these 2 rows are now starting to curve back towards each other, which is exactly what we want to basically cage in that very middle last row that we did. Just a tiny, the single double half hitch in the middle there. What we're going to do is cage that in to become the very center of the rosebud. So we then take, we need to do now is these 2 rows that we've just done, that we're making the curves on, we need to connect them in the other point here. So I take my right one and cross over again, and then the one underneath coming from the other row. So these are the 2 holding cords from those rows. I do a double half hitch with them and tighten them. And then we're closing off this first part like that. So that's the very center part of the rosebud. Now we need to just do the outer part as well. So we'll go back to using the outer cords that we haven't used in this case yet. So on my left side, I take the very outer one and bring that across all the others. And then the very next one is coming underneath. That's the working cord. So we do a double half hitch with that. Tighten that all the way up. Just like that. And then we're building that row now. Again, also coming around at a curve, going back the opposite way. And then we take the very last one on this side of the 3. So the one we just used down here to connect the first 2 rows together. And do a double half hitch with that. Coming around. Just like this. So moving down towards the tip again, but just on the outside. And then on the other side, the same thing. Take the very outer one, bring across all the others. Take the very next one, so the middle of the 3. Do a double half hitch. and then tighten that. So continue in that original row, coming around on this side, take the very next one, coming underneath, and you double half hitch, so like this. So that's that row now as well. So now you can see it's the same principle as the very inner one that we just did where we connected the two. We now have those two rows coming against each other like this. So all we need to do is connect them the same way. So I take my right one of the two middle ones here now. These are the two holding cords for those two outer rows. Cross over, and then the other one is under, and I do a double half hitch with that one as well to connect the two sides. And then once you do that, you connected the whole thing, and what we have now is basically one full rosebud. So now that we made the very first rosebud there completely, what we need to do now is start making the next one. But to be able to do that, I just need to get my cords into position. So what I'm going to do is add a few beads to them. So I'm not going to add beads to the very two inner ones here, so the two in the middle. What I'm going to do is add my beads to the two outside ones on each side. So I just start with the middle one on the one side here, and just add one of my beads onto that. So that bead is going to sit right there in the very middle. And then on the outside one here on the same side, we need to add enough beads to come around as well. So just add however many beads you need to come down the right position. Now obviously that might be different depending what kind of beads that you're using, what size of beads and that. Now with these I'm going to need 3. But if you're using smaller beads you might need more. If you're using some larger beads you might need less. So just kind of add however many you think it's going to fit, because as you can see here it's going to come around the first one just nicely, so we get the right angle to come down and make our next rosebud. So you want to add 1 to the middle and 3 to the outer one, and then you do the same thing on the other side here. So now that I got all my beads in place and ready, we can now start making the next rosebud. And for that we're just going to be doing the exact same thing. So I take my two middle ones here and then start on one side, so the very middle one, and I just start on my left side, it doesn't really matter, but just whatever you start out with, make sure you do that throughout the whole bracelet. And then I take my next one, so the middle one on this side, so the one that's only got one bead, just like that, and bring that underneath that one. You can put the other ones out of the way here, just for now, until we move over to that side. And then we do a double half hitch here, so just like when we did the last one. And what we're doing now is the very beginning part where we had the two rows coming to each their own side, building up the first part of the rosebud like that. Take the next one, the one with 3 beads on this side, and do a double half hitch with that, just like this. Tighten it, and as you can see the beads sit there just nicely and fit perfectly around. Moving over to the other side, do the same thing. So grab the middle one, the one out of these 3 without any beads on it, and that's your holding cord. Bring the next one, the one with 1 bead, underneath, and do your double half hitch here, just like that. So we're then building the row to come out the opposite direction from the one we just did. Take the cord that we have left with 3 beads on, and do your double half hitch, and then tighten that, making sure everything sits right. So just like this. So that's now both rows done, and our beads are now there, sat nice and securely in place. So what we need to do now is build the next row. So we're doing the exact same thing, we're repeating the same step as creating the first rosebud. So we take the very 2 middle ones now, cross the right one over the left one, and then do a double half hitch with the left one because that's coming underneath. That's the working cord. And then building your row, take the very next one. So just like that. Move to the other side. Remember to leave that last one out for now. And then grab the very first one you used that's coming over the other ones, bring that over, and then do a double half hitch with the middle one on the other side to make a row right underneath there. So just like that. And then we have the 2 ones in the middle here. cross the right one over the left one and do one double half hitch right there in the middle. It's going to be the very center of our rosebud, just like that. And now to kind of close that all in and continue finishing off the rosebud, bring the middle one from the left side over that holding cord you just had in the very center row, around your finger and through the loop. Continue that row, but now you're making it curve around to come back in on the other side, that very center one, and then the middle one of the three. The middle one goes over, and then we do a double half hitch with the one that comes under, because that's your working cord, and building up that row on the outside, making it curve back in, just like that. And then cross the two in the middle over here. The right one goes over the left one to tighten up those two and bring them together, just like that. And what you can always do, because we've got some work done now, put some pins in along the way to make it a bit easier to work with. So that's the very center part, building up the outside rows. Bring in the very outer one on the left side over the others and do your double half hitch with one cord at a time. Grab the very next one available to you. And the next one, so we're using all the three on the left side first here. Going over to the other side, grab the very outer one over the others, grab the very next one coming underneath and do a double half hitch with that. And then continue that, tighten it, so you continue this row curving back around on the very outside. Grab the next one to complete it, like that. We're now back down the middle here. We need to bring the two together. So cross the right one over the left one and do a double half hitch with the left one coming underneath, just like this. And now that's your second rosebud completed. So now you're back in a position where we've completed the next rosebud. You've now done two, and what we need to do now is basically add another set of beads. So just the exact same way, you add one to the middle one on each side, so one bead each there, and then three to the very outer ones. That's if you're using the same materials as me. Obviously it might be different for you, but just add the same that you did in the very first one. And then you just continue making your rosebuds like this to create your bracelet, and then make it until you reach the end, however long you need it to be. So I've now continued making my rosebuds all the way down here until I've reached the length that I need it to be. So what we need to do is just measure it, just to make sure we have the right length for the size that we need. So what I'm going to do is I measure right from the top of the loop, so the very beginning, and then, because before we add in the button, that's the next thing we need to do. That's going to be placed down here below the last rosebud, but we need to measure it before that. So just to make sure it's the right length, we'll measure from the top of the loop down to kind of just below the last rosebud, and that's going to be roughly the length. So this is going to be just about a 7.5 inch bracelet. And then before we add the button, what I'm just going to do is just take it off here and then just finish off, because as you can see we have 6 lengths of cord. We have 4 in the middle here, and then we have 2, 1 on each side, short ones. So what I'm going to do is just take the chance now to get rid of these while there's enough space to work with. So what you can do is you can add a bit of glue and then cut it down, or you could also, depending on what type of cord or thread that you're using, cut it down and then singe it with a lighter to kind of seal it in place. So I'm just going to do that because it's a satin cord, so that'll work perfectly. I'm going to cut it down so there's about 2 millimeters or so, 2 to 3 millimeters left, like that. And then just grab my lighter here. Now always be careful doing this because we're working with a flame and it's going to get hot, but it's going to work perfectly for sealing it in place. So make sure you get all the others out of the way so you don't accidentally singe them. And then just gently take the flame towards that short length that you had left and just use the lighter to press it in. And then you're going to have a nice neat finish there, and it's going to be nice and secure because we've kind of sealed it in place. You can just then go over it to make sure that it's nice and soft as well, so there's not like a rough edge sticking out, because it's going to be sitting against the skin. Do the same thing here on the other side. Just cut it down to a short length and then take the lighter and just go a bit at a time, just put the heat to it gently to begin with. So like that, and just mould it in place. So there, we're now rid of these two ends. So we're left with the 4 down at the bottom now, and these are the ones we're now going to use to then attach the button. So I'm going to just place this back on my board, so pin it in, just so it's a little bit more stable to work with. Like that. And then here we have the last 4 chords, so we have 2 in the middle and then 2 on the sides here. So what we need to do is use these, the 2 middle ones are going to be kind of the holding chords that we're going to just make a macrame around, and we're going to be making a few square knots. So I'm using the outside ones here, so I'll take my left one over first. You can start with the other side, that's fine. It's just like when we made the loop, we're making some square knots. And take the right one over that, underneath everything in the middle, so both of the holding chords, and up through the loop. And then just tighten that all the way up. This is just to get a bit of spacing before we then add the button. And do the other side to make it a full square knot, like that. And then it's really up to you how many you want to do before you add the button. I'm just going to do a couple, just to get a bit of spacing so the button, half of it doesn't sit right on top of that last rosebud. So I'll probably say do about 2 or 3. I'm going to do one more before we then add the button in and cage that in place. So just like that. So what we need to do now is add the button, and I'm going to take my button and place it on the 2 holding chords there in the middle, so you can get both through. So this is just the shank button like this, and then push it up. So it's going to sit just like this nicely. So as you can see, because we made few extra knots here, it's not going to be covering that last rosebud. And then what we need to do is just make a few square knots on the other side of this button to kind of cage it in like you would do a bead. So I just continue with my square knots, starting from the same side, and just make sure that you then tighten it to go underneath there. And then that's going to cage in and secure that button in place, so we can then use it for the loop. So I'm just going to do 2 square knots here on the other side, just for the security of it. So just like this. And now that sits there nice and securely, it doesn't move around, as you can see. So now that the button's in place, we can take this off of the board, and then there is the button attached, and it sits there nicely, and it sits in place right where you want it to be. So all I have to do is get rid of these ends of the cord here. And now you can either choose to use glue for that, so say use the E6000 or whatever you're comfortable using, and add glue around the ends of your cord, and then make sure to add it over the last few 1 or 2 square knots as well, so on the actual knots, because when you make your square knots you have a little well there. So if you put glue on there, and then also on the end, just where your cords are coming out, obviously leave it to dry, and then you can cut them off, or you can finish them off in the same way as up here. So use a lighter to singe down the ends and kind of seal them in place. That's completely up to you how you prefer to do it, and it also depends on what materials you're using. If you're using a cord where you can't singe it, you'll obviously have to use the glue. So just do that. So I've now gotten rid of all the excess cords here, you can see on the back. So it's finished off nice and neat, and then we basically have a finished bracelet now. So we can use this button through the loop, and it's nice and secure to wear, and nice and comfortable as well. And it's nice and easy closing and opening with this type of button and loop. So this is the finished bracelet, quite a simple macrame bracelet, but has a nice effect to it. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this 3D triple row goddess macrame bracelet. And this is what it looks like. So it looks like this from the side, and then from the front you have this effect going across. This is why I call it a 3D effect, because I kind of feel like, because of the